Hello, Chris Peterson here, bringing you another chess video commentary thing on one of my tournament games. This time I'm going to be playing Kevin Seidler, a local 2100 player. Kevin is one of the scariest players in Colorado. He plays very uncompromising chess. He consistently puts his opponents in smothered, tactically lost positions. I've played him 5 times before and I've barely managed to slip in 2 wins. My record going into this game is 2 wins, 2 draws, and 1 loss. The loss was a beautiful game from Kevin and is a common occurrence when his opponent's not weary of his playstyle. I found his weakness tends to be endgames, so I try to steer the game in that direction, but do it in the most active way possible. Luckily, this game I have white, which means I have several good options to do just that. So I started the game with knight f3, then he played d5, then I played c4. So this is kind of a ready opening, although he plays c6, which leads it to transpose into a semi-Slav. Then he plays knight f6, and then g3. And so this is a Catalan now. The Catalan is a good example of an opening that is sharp and solid at the same time. Depending upon the avenue chosen by black, the game can either be slightly worse ending for black, maybe a complicated middle game with equal chances, but still slightly favoring white. One of my few chess books is Ajedrez 1 D4, which features the Catalan in the first chapter, so I've actually been studying it just a very small amount. So then Kevin played d takes c4, and this is a pretty testing line for white because, white's going down a pawn, so it's going to be there's going to be some work to be done to get the pawn back and make this whole setup worthwhile. So I played bishop g2, and then Kevin played b5. So it might be a bit foolhardy for black to try to hold on to the pawn. Kevin has a pretty simple idea of putting his bishop on b7 to try to eliminate the pressure down this h1 a8 diagonal, but the problem is that my play is going to mount very quickly, and this becomes a liability for him. So I played knight e5. This isn't the most accurate opening move. Maybe better was just castling kingside, or maybe the immediate b3 to try to open up lines to put more pressure on the somewhat, weakened queenside. But instead of that, I played knight e5, and here Kevin continued bishop e7, which was his idea. And now I played, one of the common themes in the open Catalan is to open more lines with a move like b3. I jumped the gun a bit by playing b3 right away. One reason why I did this is because I lost a game to Brian Wall where I didn't chip away at the queenside suit enough, and my play just kind of ran into a brick wall. So I played b3 right away to try to break it down a little bit. Maybe better was putting pressure on the b5 pawn right away. Because of this pin, I'm threatening to just take the b5 pawn. So, and then after something like queen c7, castles, knight b to d7, bishop f4, white's building up a tremendous amount of pressure on the queenside pawns. So let's go back. Instead I played b3 right away, and Kevin just took that. And here, a lot of times, it's better to just play a takes b3, then after some sequence of moves like this, it's hard to say that white's worse, even though he's down a pawn. There's just I mean, the pressure on c6 alone pretty much makes up for it. That pawn's looking to be dropped. It's attacked 3 times, and there's no way to even defend it again. So, White should be getting his pawn back, and he has lots of activity for the investment that he put in. Anyway, but instead I played queen takes b3 just for the cheeky threat of hitting f7. So let's continue. Kevin played e6 just to try to prevent that from happening, and now I castled kingside. And I wanted to keep the tactical lines available to Kevin because I prefer those kind of games where it's kind of slugfest back and forth. So I was kind of inviting black to take another pawn here. And then after bishop b2, queen b4, queen c2, queen c5, something like this, queen b6, and then maybe a4. And it's hard to say that black is going to be lost in a position like this, but black's position is very brittle, and it's going to be difficult for him to defend everything. One small mistake, and his whole position is going to shatter into a million pieces. So he has to be very careful. And something like queen f4, and now you can start to see that black looks to be really solid, but there's a lot of potential for him to go wrong as well. So instead of going into that line, Kevin just went bishop e7. Perfectly reasonable move. The problem is it's just not a very active one. In this position, I actually missed an opportunity to make the game even more complex. After a move like knight c3, the d-pawn is not actually under real threat anymore because it can't be captured. So if he plays queen takes d4, then knight b5 is going to be really strong. And now, let's say he takes the rook, then suddenly his entire queenside is dropping, and now this is going to be dropping, and he's in a lot of trouble. So instead, if he so let's say he takes the knight, then I can go bishop b2, and now his rook falls at the end. So a nice little sequence of moves to kind of keep the position kind of fluid and dynamic. So that would have been nice, and it also puts pressure on this b5 pawn right away. So that would have been a good move. But instead I played a4. And so here Kevin played b4, and this is a good, sensible move from Kevin. He's trying to reduce the pressure on the queen side by keeping lines closed. Perhaps here he could take the d4 pawn. Then after bishop b2, queen b6, rook d1, b4 now. Maybe queen c7, a6, and then, of course, taking this would be a pretty big mistake because of just rook a6, and now the rook falls at the end, which is kind of nice. So instead, he has to back the bishop up, and then maybe just knight d2. And black is probably better here, but it's pretty disheartening to have to undevelop your pieces like that. So I can understand why that line would be kind of unfavored. So instead, Kevin played b4, and so I just played bishop b2, finally defending the d4 pawn. So Kevin castled. Then I played rook c1. So I'm just adding as much pressure as I can to this c6 pawn. And now Kevin played a5. He wants to give me the pawn back to try to eliminate the pressure. If I take the c-pawn, it's just going to be a series of trades, and that's going to be better for Kevin because he has this b4 pawn that I have to worry about. It's a protected pass pawn on b4, so trades are not good for me at this point. So I just went knight d2, and then Kevin played queen b6, and the game is starting to stabilize a little bit. Black has secured his king. He's going to work on untangling his queen side. It will take a while as his pieces are kind of pinned and tied down to defense. And considering my pawn deficit at the moment, I wanted to keep the game as complicated as possible. So I played a crazy looking move. I played g4. And the simple plan of doubling rooks on the c file is strong as well, and I'll probably end up getting my pawn back that way. But again, that kind of leads to trades and would kind of put me in a weird spot, because then I'm tied down to this b4 pawn the rest of the game, and I don't really like that. So after this move, it's starting to get a little bit difficult to find decent moves for black. If he plays... Well, my main idea behind g4 was to prevent his knight from developing. So if he tries knight b to d7, g5 is going to win a piece, as I can capture this knight and it hits the bishop at the same time. And then if the knight moves, this d7 knight would be undefended. And then on top of that, there's a fork happening. So g4, after g4, black has to be very careful. Kevin could just play something like queen c7, and the idea behind that is just to defend d7 and allow his knight to develop. But I can understand why this move didn't want to be played, simply because the black queen just went to b6, and it's kind of hard to convince oneself to waste 2 tempi like that. So instead, Kevin played rook a7, which is a little bit of a weird move, I think. But it's understandable. He wants to try to add more defense to the b7 bishop, which might allow him to play c5 in the near future. If Kevin can get c5 in, he's probably doing just fine, because his queen side completely opens up. So I played g5. I don't want to waste any time. Knight d5. And now that I have some extra space on the king side, I fancied starting an attack over there. If I can open up this a1 h8 diagonal and get more pieces over there, it'll be hard for black to defend. One tip for playing Kevin is just grasp that initiative and just never give it back. Try to hang on to it as long as you can. So here I made a slight mistake. I played knight e4. I should have tried to prevent his knight from coming to f4. Oh, let me make it a red line. And to do that, I could play maybe queen g3. I'll get rid of this arrow. If I play queen g3, then I can cover this f4 square and prevent his knight from harassing my bishop. And then moves like e4 start to get more and more interesting. I didn't want to do that right away, because I didn't like his knight coming into c3 and forcing me to trade it off for his forcing me to trade off my dark square bishop. But I mean, in hindsight, it's not looking too bad. So instead, I played knight e4. Then Kevin just went knight f4, and then I went bishop f1. I needed to defend e2, and then I also needed to defend h3 just in case, and I didn't want to block my queen from swinging over. So that was the point of bishop f1. And now Kevin made a blunder. So, I mean, understandably, black wants to route his knight, this knight. He wants to put this knight on d5, because that'll support f4. It'll stop the d pawn from moving, and it'll just add more defense to the king side. But he kind of has to wait because the knight is doing a very important job right now of defending the d7 square. But Kevin just played knight a6, which is not the best idea, as it leaves the d7 square undefended. And I played queen g3. Just kind of an in-between move to kind of seize the chance to gain a tempo. And now knight g6. And now, kind of a funny thing happened. I went to move my knight to play knight d7 and fork the king and the queen and knight, or queen and rook. And someone said my name to the side, and I looked over at them. And as I was looking, my hand accidentally touched the e4 knight rather than the e5 knight. And without really thinking about it, I just grabbed the e5 knight and went knight d7. And Kevin could have claimed touch move rule and said, well, you touch the e4 knight, you have to move the knight. And I was aware of that, and I would have just did it without much grumbling. But that would have kind of ruined my whole plan, because then I would have to play, I don't know, I don't even know where this knight can go to a decent square. Maybe I have to go back to d2 and maybe try to take up c4. I would have had to rethink my entire game. But Kevin didn't say anything, which kind of surprised me a bit. I guess he was kind of resigned to the fact that he blundered with knight a6 and didn't want to skirt out of it by claiming a touch move rule. But weird things happen, and I don't know. I probably would have called touch move just because I'm cold and heartless, but I guess I can thank Kevin for not doing that. Actually, let's just see what the evaluation says. Let's say I have to move the knight, and let's say I go knight d2. Yeah, suddenly everything's my position is just crumbling after c5. It's really bad. Is there anywhere else I can go? Maybe I have to do something crazy? Oh, that's even worse. Yeah, there's really no decent squares here. Well, this one isn't too bad, I guess. Can you not just... Oh, because d7's still under attack, so you can't take the pawn. So that's not too bad. I can live with that. I mean, it's still, minus 1.5 for me, but not too bad. So let's see. I played knight d7. Then Kevin played queen d8, really the only move. Knight f8, knight f8. And now I'm up in material and I have the initiative, so I'm just much better here. So here I played e3, and my idea is to put my bishop on d3 and kind of aim it at black's king. It isn't the best idea in the world. Since there's a knight on f8, there is no mate, which is a pretty common saying. So now Kevin's continued with his plan of plopping his knight on d5. Then I play bishop d3, knight d5. And I kept looking at ideas like knight f6 check, but they didn't really seem to do a whole lot if he just moves his king out of the way, and then I'm kind of stuck doing nothing. And in this case, he can just play knight takes, bishop takes, and I've just lost a pawn for nothing. But every move I kept looking at, does knight f6 do anything? Does knight f6 do anything? But instead I ended up settling for h4, just to add defense to the g5 pawn. And I had overlooked Kevin's response of bishop a6. There isn't any decent retreats from my bishop, so I just had to trade it off. Bishop a6, rook a6. And then I played rook c2, and the computer doesn't really like this move, but I do. It threatens to double on the c-file, and it also has ideas of swinging the rook over to the king side after the f-pawn moves. But Kevin found a good move. He played b3. And this kind of puts a question as to why I put my rook on c2. Because I either have to keep it on the second rank where it's not going to do anything until this f-pawn moves, or I can move it along the c-file and build up more pressure on the c6 pawn. So I played rook c4. And now Kevin's time pressure was starting to get to the point where he can't spend too much time thinking. He's down to just 5 minutes here. The complications in the early game were paying dividends for me, and Kevin has used up nearly all of his time. There are no extensions in this time control. It's just game 70 with a 5-second delay. So mistakes are bound to happen. And with that in mind, he played king h8. Just, lining things up here, kind of weakening this this pawn here, and it's just not the best of moves. I guess it's somewhat understandable because he probably kept envisioning the knight coming to f6 and causing him problems. So here I played knight c5, occupying the outpost and opening ideas up for moves like e4, e4, d5, and this bishop will finally get from behind its prison, his d4 prison. So Kevin played bishop d6, getting a tempo on my queen, but I gained the tempo right back because now I'm hitting his weak f7 pawn. And now Kevin played rook a7, just defending. And then I played e4. Kevin played knight f4. And now all trades are good for me at this point because I'm up material. So I just played I played e5. And after bishop c5, I probably should. Well, I have many options. I can play rook takes bishop, pawn takes bishop, queen takes knight. I figured if I take the knight, it'll reduce the number of defenders on the king side and kind of eliminate some of his counter chances. So I played queen takes knight. Then he gained a tempo with knight g6. And now I couldn't really decide where to put my queen. There are many good options. I could go to g4, which, g4 or g3, to add support to the h and g pawns, or I could go to e4 and add support or add more pressure to the c6 pawn, and this also looks after the h4 pawn. So I settled on e4. I don't know, that I just settled on it. There's not much to say about that. So Kevin retreated his bishop, and then I just took his c pawn. So now I'm up in exchange, and I got my pawn back. So I'm just up a solid exchange at this point. And now Kevin, in his time pressure, all he wants to do is find simple counter-attacking moves to try to get the position to a point where he can get a perpetual because my king is kind of wide open. So with that, he played h6. And normally it would be a bad move, but in this case it kind of complicates it a little bit and potentially gives him more counterattacking chances. And now I kind of wish that I had played queen g4 or queen g3, but what can you do? So now all I wanted to do was eliminate any kind of easy counterplay. Kevin was down to just 2 minutes for the rest of the game, and if I take away his easy moves, he will blunder or run out of time or something. So I played rook c3, sacrificing a pawn but adding more defense to my king. Kevin played hg5, queen g5, and then I played rook g3. And my king can't really get any safer than this, and now his king is a little bit more exposed as the h-file is now wide open. So I have ideas of piling up on the h-file and checkmate. So Kevin played queen f4, and simply trading queens here leaves me with an overwhelming advantage. I'm just up in exchange, and I'm gonna snap off his b3 pawn, so I'm up in exchange and the pawn. But instead I played queen e2, which is not a very good move at all. And Kevin played king g8. And then I blundered again. I spent a lot of time in these positions because I want to reduce his play. But I don't want to play, passive defending moves either. So what started out as like a 40-minute advantage, or a 30-minute advantage, has now gone down to a 15-minute advantage. And now my position over the board is completely ruined. So it's really frustrating playing in other people's time control because, they just have to find, strong players will play strong moves instinctively, and they can work out the tactics and stuff on your time. So it's really frustrating to try to work out the tactics on your time and prevent them from having those simple, strong moves. Playing in other people's time control is something I need to work on, and there's a lot of there's a lot of room for improvement in a lot of areas of my play, that's for sure. So here, Kevin can play rook c7, and he's probably drawing this now as he has a tremendous amount of counterplay. So if I try rook h3, for example, he can go bishop b4, and now I have no mate, so maybe I go rook f1, and now rook c2, and now there's just too much pressure here, so maybe queen h7, then I have to take this, queen g4, and I have nothing better than just repeating the position, because if I try something like bishop a1 to save the piece, then bishop e1 is going to devastate me, so I have to be extremely careful. But instead, in his time pressure, he missed his chance. He played bishop e7. Then I played rook c1. And then Kevin played rook a8. He's just trying to get out of this back rank checkmate thing that I was threatening. And then again, I blundered pretty bad here. I played rook c7. And as soon as I moved, I realized, oh crap, he has queen d2. And this is going to be a real problem for me because I don't have a good defense to queen e1 check. So let's say he goes queen d2. The only decent defense for me is rook takes g7, or rook takes g6. I could try rook takes b3, but you can see from the computer evaluation that it's rook g6 is the best chance. So then queen e1 check, king g2. The main problem, let's say I try, sorry, I kind of messed that up. So let's say I try bishop c1, for example. Then he's going to go queen e1 check, and I can't go to g2 because he'll have an opportunity to fork me. So like king g2, then so knight h4, and then if I take this, b2, and he's going to get a second queen, and that's going to be, oh, I guess it's not going to be that bad. Interesting. Oh, knight h4. Oh, my bad. I put in the wrong move. So I can't take that, so I have to go, king h2, then queen f2. If I try king h3, then queen h1, king g4, queen d1, f3, g6. Looks like my queen's going to be trapped. It's getting pretty hairy over here. Let's see. I don't know. This is hideous because he's getting so much play, and he doesn't deserve it at this point. But yeah, it's a really nasty position. So after rook c7, I saw queen d2, and I was like, this is really bad. But Kevin, because he's so short of time, he pretty much has to play his first thought, and his first thought was queen h4. And this is going to be the final mistake. Let's see, queen h4 is... So he was down to a minute 20 after queen h4. And after seeing all these terrifying drawing lines, I decided I needed to just trade queens, lest I screw it up again. So I just played queen takes queen. And he can't play knight takes because his bishop hangs, so he has to play bishop takes. Then I just took off his b pawn. Then knight f4. And now I played rook f3, and I'm just trying to pile up on the f7 pawn. Then Kevin played g5. And then looking to trade, I just played bishop c1. Kevin went knight e2. King... Oh, I guess I went king g2. Knight c1, rook c1. And then Kevin played g4. And then after rook f4... excuse me. Kevin let his flag fall here, but there aren't any good moves for black. This game was very fun, especially early on. I live for those kind of complications, and I'm kind of pleased how it played out. I'm a bit disappointed that it wasn't a cleaner win, but the creative play from both sides kind of makes up for that, in my opinion. So, a funny story. During the post-mortem of this game, David Hartsook was battling Brian Wall. And in typical Brian fashion, he played a hideous opening, but somehow managed equality in the ensuing ending. During the subsequent time scramble, Brian accidentally hung a rook, and the frustration was felt throughout the club as Brian let out a guttural scream and exploded the pieces into the nearby spectators. He stormed off, making sure to karate kick an innocent chair on his way. It was quite a spectacle, and David and I were the only... anyway, I've been laughing about it for like 2 weeks now. So David won that game, which left him with 3 points, and then I have 3 points. So going into round 4, we're going to be playing each other. And that game is going to decide who's the 2014 Denver Chess Club champion. So that's it for this game. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Yeah, so I'll bring you guys the David Hartsook game next. I'll catch you guys next time.